Hi guys, it's Mrs. Bajoli. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about a line of best fit and trend lines today. We're going to do things a little bit differently today, so before you actually continue with this video, I would go grab a calculator and some paper if you haven't already. I included that in the directions for the assignment, but just in case you missed that. I'm going to go through a couple of problems and then I'm going to ask you to try some here and there on your own. So trend lines is the phrase that Go Math uses. We usually call it line of best fit, but I'm going to try to remember to call trend lines. So when you guys are constructing trend lines, and we normally would have done more of that in the actual classroom than we're going to do at the end of this year, but when you are actually the one constructing a trend line, it's basically a line that's going through a path of the points. It can't go through every point because the points are not forming a straight line, which is what we're used to. We try, if possible, to have our lines go through the center of 2 points that are within that path, and we try to have a clear y-intercept. That's when we are constructing a line. When we have the power to construct the line and we have to write the equation for that trend line, it's always best to kind of use 2 definite points and a clear y-intercept. But sometimes you're given trend lines and you're responsible for writing an equation for the trend line, and sometimes that information is not given to you as easily as we would like. So we're going to go through a couple of things that we've actually already learned throughout the year. We've already written equations for lines, so we're actually just going to do that now for trend lines. So in order to write the equation for a line, we need to use 2 points on the line to find the slope, okay, which we're going to review today. We need to identify the y-intercept, which is easy enough, but sometimes we also have to calculate it, which is a little bit more difficult, and we'll use the equation y equals mx plus b to do that. And then once we have the slope and the y-intercept, we can write the equation of the line. So we've, again, actually already done this throughout the year. We're just kind of incorporating it into this topic. So let's take a look at a couple of basic things. So first thing we need to be able to do is to find the slope if you are given 2 points. So we know that we can always label our points x1, y1 and x2, y2, and we can use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, or you guys know what I tend to do. I always like to use a table instead. So I'm going to set up my table. I'm going to put in my 2 ordered pairs. I am going to find my change in y. So this is going up by 40. My change in x is going up by 60. So I know my slope is the change in y over the change in x. So in this case, it is 40 over 60, which reduces to 2/3. So that's review. Hopefully you guys remember how to do that. So what I'd like you to do is to hit pause and to try number 2 on your own. All right, so hopefully you've tried that. And again, you can use the slope formula if you want. That's perfectly fine, but I like the table. So I'm going to substitute in 2085 and 4145. So I can see that I have a y that is going up by 60. I have an x that's going up by 20. So for the slope of these 2 points, change in y divided by change in x would be equal to 3. So hopefully you guys got the same thing. And just a reminder, it wouldn't matter if I put 40, 145 in the top row of my table, as long as you find your slope, your y, change in y and you change in x the same way. And keeping in mind, if your y's are going down or your x's are going down, you need to have a negative value for that. So as long as you keep that in mind, the order in which you write the points in the table doesn't matter. You should still come up with the same slope. All right, so let's take it one step further. So if you have a line of best fit or a trend line already graphed for you, we know that in order to write the equation of a line, not only do we need the slope, but we need the y-intercept. So if you can clearly see what the y-intercept is, which in this case we can see that it's equal to 20. That's half the information that you need to write the equation. But I would still have to figure out the slope. So so for this particular problem, I'm going to drop 2 points into the table, and you don't necessarily have to use these 2 points here, 50,520 and 15,170. You can if you want, but you don't have to. I am, only because these points are a little bit more difficult, and then I'm going to show you with the y-intercept that you would get the same exact answer. So we have 15,170 and we have 50,520. So if I subtract 520 and 170, we have an increase of 350 for the y's and an increase of 35 for the x's. So my slope would be 350 divided by 35, which would give me 10. Now, if I opted not to use these points, and let's say I wanted to use the y-intercept, which is 0, 20, and let's say that first point, because those numbers are smaller, I have an increase of my y's of 150, an increase of my x's of 15. If I divide 150 by 15, I'm still going to get the same 10 that I got using those other 2 points. So if you know what the y-intercept is, that's really usually your best bet, to use that as one of your 2 points to help you find the slope. And again, in this problem, the y-intercept is 20. I could tell from the graph. So my equation in y-intercept form is going to be y equals, I have a slope of 10, so it's 10x, y-intercept of 20, so y equals 10x plus 20. All right, let's take a look at another example. So here we have a trend line already graphed for us. Again, we can use any one of the 2 points that are plotted, or I can use the y-intercept because I can clearly see what it is here to figure out my slope. So I'm going to start there. So in this case, I'm just going to use the 2 points they gave us, 5, 10 and 6, 8. So here you have to be a little bit careful. We're going from 10 to 8. So it's a change of 2, but it's a negative 2. So be careful with that. My x's are going up by 1. So my slope is negative 2 over 1 or negative 2. I can tell from the graph I have a y-intercept of 20. So I know my equation is y equals negative 2x plus 20. All right, so there's 2 different problems, one with a positive slope, one with a negative slope. So why don't you guys take a look at number 5, and why don't you pause me and try this on your own. All right, so hopefully you came up with the correct slope. So I'm going to use my 2 points that are plotted, 1085 and 25,160. My y's are increasing by, if I do this on the calculator, 160 minus 85, that's an increase of 75. My x's are an increase of 15. So if I divide 75 by 15, I get a slope of 5. If you chose to use 0.35, the y-intercept, with one of the other 2 points to figure out the slope, you should come up with the same exact slope of 5. The y-intercept, again, is easy to see here. It's at 0.35. So my equation, y equals 5x plus 35. All right, so hopefully you guys did okay with that. All right, so our next situation would be where we have a trend line drawn on a graph and we don't know exactly what the y-intercept is. So this would be the most work you would have to do for this type of problem. So my slope, of course, I'm going to find the same way that I've been doing it. I can't use the y-intercept because I don't know what it is. So I am going to use 590 and 10,150. I can see the y is going up by 60. The x is going up by 5. So my slope is 60 divided by 5, or 12. Now in this case, I have to calculate the y-intercept. So if you remember, and we have done this before, it's been a while, we can use our equation y equals mx plus b, and we could use our slope, which I just found, of 12, and I could use one of the 2 points that I know. I'm going to use 590 because the numbers are smaller, and those are going to be my x and y values. So if I substitute in 90 for y, 12 for the slope, 5 for the x, then I could solve for b. So I have 90 equals 60 plus b, and if I subtract 60 on both sides, I get a y-intercept of 30. So I have a slope of 12, a y-intercept of 30. So my equation would be y equals 12x plus 30. All right, so yes, a little bit more involved, but again, you're finding the slope as you normally would for any problem, and then you just want to take the slope and one of the 2 points on your graph and figure out what the y-intercept would be. All right, so why don't you guys try this last one, number 7. You're going to have to use the 2 points on the graph to figure out your slope, and then once you get your slope, you're going to use that slope and one of the 2 points, which I would definitely use 250, and you're going to solve for B. All right, so pause me and try that one on your own. All right, so for this problem, we have 2 points. I'm going to put those into my table. I can see my y is going up by 120. My x's is going up by 6. So for my slope, I have 120 divided by 6, or 20. So that is my m. And of those 2 points, like I said, 250, smaller, easier numbers. So I'm going to use those for my x and y. And I'm going to substitute that all in to figure out what b is. So I have a y value of 50, a slope of 20, an x value of 2. And when I simplify, I'm going to get 10 is equal to b. So my equation is y equals 20x plus 10. All right, so a lot of that was review. Like I said, we've done this throughout the year with different types of problems. Now we just want to apply it to trend lines, and you're going to see some of that in the Go Math stuff that you have to do over the course of Tuesday and Wednesday. So if you have any questions along the way, you could always snapshot it and send it to me. I am going to do another Zoom session either on Wednesday or Thursday. So I will definitely let you know about that tomorrow. So look out for that. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And that's about it for now. So there's no other assignment for today. It was kind of just to go over this review stuff and try some of these problems within the video. So hopefully you guys have a good rest of the day, and I will see you and